Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down all sorts of cool stuff going on with the RB position, the perfect running back strategy show, if you will. Talk about a great time to get into the thick of fantasy football season. Hope you guys are getting prepped for those drafts and enjoying the last few weeks with your friends and family before we ignore all of them and pursue fantasy football immortality. Of course, though, I cannot accomplish all this alone. Accordingly, I am joined by the man back from vacation, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. Good to have you back, bud. Also, Matthew Freedman. Dwain, how's Cabo?
Oh, man. Yeah, Cabo is really where I was. It wasn't my computer was broken. I left and I went for an eye. I wish that's what I had gotten to do, but no, unfortunately, no. I sent Ian a picture of like me with a laptop up, with my iPad up, and with my computer like freaking out, like just trying to write all the preseason utilization write-ups on Sunday, and my computer was crashing like every 30 seconds. But we got through it. We got the new one, Ian. I'm very happy with it. So yeah, man, I'm ready to rock. Excited to be back.
I asked Dwain for an updated TreVeyon Henderson projection. He told me if that caused his computer to crash, he would go ahead and unalive me. So thank you, Dwain, for getting a new computer. I'm not trying to catch those hands. Freeman, I've heard that there are actually rumors you are taking a hammer to your computer to get a sabbatical. Are these true?
I can neither confirm nor deny. And hats off to Dwain for giving the hard sell on, no, really, it was the computer. I wasn't taking time off. I definitely don't look a little more tan. I mean, Dwain, like the glow is just radiating off of you. Yeah, sure. That was a nice.
It's actually from all the words I wrote in articles. I think I'm like up to 50,000 words in the last 2 weeks. I'm getting a suntan from the screen, man.
I would believe that.
Computer suntan. That's pretty amazing. Well, anyway, guys, again, plenty of RB strategy goodness to get to today. Dwain actually, speaking of all those words, has a very free article over on fantasylife.com. So again, getting into a lot of that. First, though, two very big updates for Rashee Rice and Quinshon Judkins news. Time for the DraftKings opening lines. All right, guys, kicking things off with Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice. We have found out that he is expected to have his disciplinary hearing with the NFL on September 30th. That means that he is tentatively expecting to play at least the first 4 games of the season. On the one hand, you could say, okay, maybe the NFL is going to continue to draw this process out. On the other hand, Dwain, it does seem like this could be a Zeke-esque suspension where it actually happens smack dab in the middle of the year. Side note, the Chiefs do have a Week 10 bye. I've gone ahead and tried to look at ace legal expert Drew Davenport, also friend of the podcast, to get his opinion on all this. Drew is saying there's a chance of a 4 or 5 game suspension. He's putting that at 50%, 6 games, 25%. So Dwain, again, it seems like we're still in that same 4 to 6 game suspension, but man, if it's going to come in week 7, week 8, a lot more bye weeks to worry about, it's not ideal.
And Albert Breer, he put it at 5 to 6, so slightly higher than where we have Drew. And to your point with Drew, he did up the percentage chance that this could be a 6-game suspension. And again, like Drew's trying to read the tea leaves, and we love him for it. Like I'm so glad we have someone out here actually trying to decipher all this information for us. And the big concern is, why is this getting pushed off for 4 more weeks? And really, like, again, this is speculation, but it could really be because like the NFL may have come back to Rashee Rice and his camp and said, we won 8 games. Like, and they're trying to figure out like, no, we don't want 8 games. So it's tough to really decipher it, but it's not ideal from a standpoint of it getting pushed out for that reason, because it could mean a longer suspension. But then also just the fact that we've now got to deal with it. Or if he was going to miss 4 to 5 games to start the season, I want y'all's thoughts on this. Like, that was okay for me, because he's recovering from an LCL anyway. All reports are that he looks amazing in training camp. That part of things are going over fine, but it was kind of like, okay, he gets some extra time to heal up, like get the leg really in the right place, and then you come back and you start playing ball. Now, not knowing where the suspension's going to be, like, I'm still willing to draft Rashee Rice. I do think it has to be the right kind of build. I'm working on my wide receiver strategy article. I'm almost done with it. I've kept Rashee Rice in it. I already had him in it. This news broke today, but I did move him down a little bit because of what you said, Ian. It's going to come when you're dealing with all your bye weeks and all these other things. So I think if you draft Rashee Rice, you really got to make sure that you got your bases covered, and the way you draft the rest of your wide receivers probably means drafting one extra wide receiver than what I might have in my guidelines for the strategy. Could mean taking another wide receiver sooner than what you want. That could end up bumping off either your tight end or your quarterback. Maybe you waited on one of those 2 positions. So there's a cost that comes with it. So you really got to map out how you're going to handle, those games, which we don't know where they're going to happen. What if this drags out for like 6 or 7 weeks and his suspension comes more towards the fantasy playoffs? Like, that's also in the range of outcomes. So this is honestly like, I'm still drafting Rashee Rice because he's such a good player, 17.8 fantasy points per game since taking over as the Chiefs starter in week 14 of 2023. But at the same time, man, like, just a lot of uncertainty with what's going to happen here that could be a real pain in the butt, like, for your fantasy season.
Freedman, Galaxy Brain idea. You draft Rashee Rice and Jordan Addison, say fantasy football team chemistry, whatever. We don't need that. You got Rice during Addison's suspension. Then you get Addison during Rice's suspension. Am I onto something here, Freedman?
You know what? I absolutely love that idea. I mean, it's wild. It's out there, but sometimes you need some out of the box type of thinking.
That's the kind of thing you need to be thinking. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea. I will say that it's interesting, and Dwain, you can probably talk about this, but how this doesn't really change maybe so much the projections that we would have, because let's say before you were thinking, before you were thinking, all right, maybe he's suspended 3 or 4 games. Maybe you still have that same thought, but it does change, right? Like, there's a difference between rankings and projections, and sometimes people kind of don't really understand the nuance of that, but he drops in the rankings. I don't know if he really drops in the projections, because you might still expect him to get the same total number of fantasy points. It's just the sequencing of when he gets those points that absolutely matters to you. And so I think he will drop maybe around in the rankings. I'm going to be very curious. We got a great ADP tool at the site to see where he ends up falling, especially in home leagues. He might fall to the point to where, Dwain saying he still has him in his strategy article, he might fall to the point to where he actually is a value. And I'm going to be monitoring that pretty closely, because this doesn't change the projections. And if I can stomach having him for the beginning of the season, my team is hot, just sort of ride out the middle part of the season where there's some uncertainty with him, and then he comes back for the fantasy playoffs, I could get a guy who's an actual difference maker at a discount, because people were just a little too hesitant about the uncertainty with him.
You know where I love him?
Again, the roster construction. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, where you were going with the roster construction thing, Ian, where I love a guy like Rashee Rice is, let's say, we're going to talk running back strategy here in a minute, but let's say you did start off with 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, and then you come back and get aggressive and you take Omari and Hampton in round 4, or maybe you took TreVeyon Henderson, and then you get Rashee Rice like as your wide receiver 2, knowing that, man, you already have an absolutely like your running back room is loaded. And when you do get Rashee Rice on the field, you have a top 12 wide receiver very likely. It's really likely that you do, especially once he's fully healthy. So, I mean, I think there's ways to play it. You just got to figure out how to backfill it. I think, Ian, your idea of Jordan Addison, I know partially you were joking, and I loved your tweet earlier, and kind of like that madman, the mad scientist kind of thing. I forgot who that was. Is that Charlie from
Boys Sunny?
Yeah, it was Charlie. He's got all the strings going everywhere. I cracked up as soon as I saw that. But it's actually, that is the kind of strategy you need. You're going to need someone that you know is a really good player that you're getting a discount on for another reason, which is still for a suspension, that you can use, right? So I think just making sure that you handle the plan correctly. Here's the challenge. Like, once you get to Rashee Rice, if you guys are believers in that he's probably a top 12 wide receiver when he's on the field, and I think that's the most likely outcome. We could get a surprise. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's a wide receiver too. But based on what we've seen, dude, it's just really hard because, we love Devonta Smith. We love Zay Flowers. We like guys like, Jerry Jeudy. But, man, I'm still going to take Rashee Rice over those guys, for the ceiling. So I don't even know how much more we can move him down. Freedman, I could easily see taking George Pickens, Jamison Williams, Tet McMillan, some other guys that also have that I think have really big ceilings if they hit right. I could see taking them over Rice now, but I don't think there's much room. I can't say how far he'll fall. I don't think I'm going to move him that far down my ranks, though. I think a max of maybe 4 or 5 spots.
It makes me think of some of the conversations, Dwain, that you and I had this summer where we were thinking about guillotine leagues and how people will probably still shoot for upside when they're looking at some of these studs who fall to the waiver wire. So for people who aren't familiar with guillotine leagues, you should go check it out. Great site, but the kind of thing where studs will end up on the waiver wire because teams get cut every week. And I think Rashee Rice is in a similar boat where people are going to think about, this is a top 12 guy. I can get him in a discount. I ride out the uncertainty and I'm playing in the championship and I have a guy that I can lock into my starting lineup and I got him at a discount.
Yeah.
If he is, in fact, going to be on the field during that championship. The other big news, Quinshon Judkins, he will not be actually facing charges. Prosecutors have declined to file a formal, misdemeanor battery charge against Judkins. The factors reportedly include late reporting of the alleged incident to police, no surveillance video, and no independent witnesses. Fox Sports' Jordan Schultz has reported that Judkins is expected now to return to the team, and likely that will happen in the near future. So, again, seems like a situation where we were talking here a few weeks ago, and man, we had no idea what was going to happen. I was continuing to yell, the man is not on a football team. Now it seems like that will be the case. Of course, we have seen instances in the past, notably Ezekiel Elliott back in, I believe, 2018, getting suspended 4 or 6 games despite not actually facing charges himself. That said, that was then. This is now. We have had, again, some overturn in terms of the way the NFL is dealing with this. So, again, Dwain, it's a situation where this happened about an hour ago. I would love to start getting, the more legal expert opinions, and also maybe these insiders can tell us a thing or two before it actually becomes live and public information. But overall thoughts, Dwain, because I know you've already got your rankings updated at fantasylife.com.
Yeah, rankings are updated. Projection updates will go through tonight, but I've already updated them on the back end. Quinshon Judkins, he graded out well in the rookie supermodel. I mean, he was right there with TreVeyon, Henderson, 2 different backs, but they graded out well for different reasons. So this is a player that we like. Now, not an offense that we are necessarily in love with. When I first had Quinshon Judkins projected earlier this year, I think I had him at 58% of the rushing attempts. I didn't give him suspended games. Maybe the NFL steps in, but kind of the way I handled it for now, interested in Freedman's thoughts here. But I gave him 49% of the rushing attempts, right? 49, 50%. Still kept Dylan Sampson with about 30%. Really took Jerome Ford down. I moved Quinshon Judkins up in my rankings to around 70. And so if you look at him right now in our consensus ADP over on fantasylife.com, Quinshon is the running back 35 at pick 106. He's down 25, 24, 13, 15 picks across these sites. So I'm moving him above. Here are the names above him in just ADP. And you guys stop me if there's one you wouldn't do. I'm going over Scatabo. I'm going over Jordan Mason, who I actually still love. I'm going over ETN. I'm going over Jalen Warren. I'm going over Tyrone Tracy. I'm going over Brian Robinson Jr., Caleb Johnson, Tony Pollard, Pacheco. That feels like the sweet spot to me. Somewhere in that range with those guys. He might start the season a little slow, probably some risk here at least of some sort of a suspension. We don't know for sure, but it could be 0 games. So that's the range that I'm going to put him in. I think, he's a talented young player. Going to be behind right now in training camp, but we still have enough time for him to get up to speed. So somewhere right in that range, probably not going to want to have him in your starting lineup in week 1. So that's something that you have to think about. But that's kind of the sweet spot for me, somewhere right in there. What do you guys think?
Freedman?
I agree. He's in the Caleb Johnson range, although I'm kind of still bullish on Caleb Johnson, even though his week 1 of the preseason didn't go as people would have wanted. I think he's a low end RB2. I wanted to be high on Judkins after the NFL draft. And Dwain, when we were doing projections right then, I had him projected for a really healthy workload. I'm going to go back to that. I don't know if that's going to be sort of 59%, maybe a little bit more, but I'm going to be pretty into him. And I think he misses maybe a game, 1 to 2 games. So 1.5 might be where I end up having him docked more than the typical running back. So let's say we give him maybe 14.5 games, maybe 15, but I'm still into him. I
around
really
7
want him in
pick
almost all the
probably is
formats.
about where you're going to land. Because Pacheco is pick 72 in a 12-team league. He's the last pick, right? In round 6. So you're heading into round 7 where you get into Pollard, Caleb Johnson, Brian Robinson Jr. Or do you see yourself actually going higher than that with Quinshon?
I think higher. And I'll also say
so
I'm not as down
like
on that
round
offense.
6 pick.
Probably. Yeah. I'm not as down on that offense as most people are either.
And that's going to do it for our DraftKings.
I know you're not going to.
Roll it. Football fans, the countdown is on and the road to kickoff starts now. From bold predictions to preseason hype, this is the perfect time to lock in your picks and join the action. I partnered with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you a killer offer. Place a $10 NFL futures bet and get a Survivor Pool ticket automatically. Back your squad and take a shot at the $1 million top prize. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. And hey guys, Survivor Pools are simple. Pick one NFL team to win each week. Survive in advance, but here's the twist. You can't pick the same team twice. Strategy counts. Think you can outlast the field? Well, if you want to make your picks even more exciting, use your bet to explore same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Stack multiple bets from one matchup for max drama, and if sports betting isn't live in your state yet, no sweat. You can still play DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports for a chance to win real cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Again, sign up using promo code FANTASYLIFE. Place a $10 NFL futures bet and claim your ticket to the Survivor Pool. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The ultimate running back strategy for all things fantasy football, presented by the fine folks over at GoPuff. Dwain, again, you have an excellent article for free over at fantasylife.com. Wanted to go through, again, some of the bigger picture, I guess, more general advice you have at the top. First of all, starting with knowing what your actual starting lineup requirements are.
Yeah, absolutely. So you should think about this for all your positions, guys. There's 3 questions that you should, or 3 concepts you should be thinking about, 3 questions you should be asking yourself. So positional supply and demand. How many do you need? If you play in a league that starts 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and no flex, that changes the dynamics, right, of how you're going to have to think about supply and demand. But if you play in a league where you start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 flexes, Ian and I found ourselves in those streets the other night on Real Time Sports, and these guys went nuts with running backs. And we were literally sitting there like, Ian, I can't remember who our first running back was, but it wasn't an ideal situation. So you got to think about Jordan Mason. Sort of things. Was it Jordan Mason? Okay, yeah. So if you've got 3 wide receivers, that obviously changes things. So you got to think about that. Like if in the more flex spots, the more starters you have at running back and wide receiver, honestly, the more it should make you willing to wait on tight end and on quarterback, the onesie positions. But if you're playing in a home league that's just 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 1 flex, man, you can take an elite tight end early. You can take an elite quarterback early. There's probably even a strategy where you could do both. I typically don't. But that's the first thing, positional supply and demand. Then the other thing is value. You really want to start to look down the draft board and you start to look through tiers, and you want to find players that are really tiered similar to others, but you can get them later in the draft. And then if you can find spots where there's a lot of those guys, because you don't want to be trying to thread like this very, you don't want to be trying to thread this needle that's so thin that it's like, there's this one guy I want. And if he goes, like your whole draft strategy gets blown up. So when I say this, you need 4 or 5 names that you're looking at. That you're like, man, in rounds 5 and 6, I really like these 4 to 5 names. I think they're similar to the players in rounds 3 or 4. Well, now you start to have the makings of, okay, I could wait on this position and I could take some other positions in these other 2 rounds before, and I still get similar players later. So value is a big part. We're going to walk through all the value plays, so we'll talk through those. And then the last thing is draft capital allocation. The more you spend early in your draft on the position, the less you spend later. If you take an elite quarterback in the first 3 rounds, guys, you don't even need another quarterback unless you're playing in a super flex. Like, you can stop. If you take Trey McBride in round 2, you can stop. Obviously, you're playing best ball. You need more. You're playing some of these other formats, you may need more. But in a typical home league, you can stop if you've already spent that high-end draft capital, and you can spend those picks later on the spots that you waited on. You need more darts, so you want to spend more picks later. So those are really the three things, looking at the lineup requirements, what's supply and demand going to look like, where are the value spots in your draft, and then finally, okay, the more you spend early, the less you spend late. If you take 3 running backs out of the gate, 1, 2, 3, dude, you're probably not drafting another running back until round 10 or 11. You've got to address the other needs on your teams in rounds 4 through 9.
Additionally, Dwain, volume is king at running back. Fun fact, you cannot score points without the football.
Yeah, volume is king. And the interesting part about this, look, we still love efficient running backs, guys that can run for 5-6 yards per carry. If you look at some of the guys that have broken fantasy football over the years, they have those sort of things. Look at not Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley last year, went completely nuts behind that great offensive line, had all those long touchdown runs. So we care about those things. We want the backs that have that thing in their bag. But at the end of the day, unlike wide receiver, you just turn and hand the ball off, and typically since the quarterback's not blocking, you got 9 guys blocking for you. So we're looking for the guys that can get the volume, and it makes it easier, Ian, also as injuries occur, for another player to step in. And so it's just something you got to keep in mind. You're much less likely to find a really good wide receiver off the waiver wire, especially if you play in a larger league, because it requires so much talent. A wide receiver just getting on the field and running routes, you guys know who these guys are. Alan Lazard, Gabe Davis, all these guys, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, people that have been pushed up draft boards over the years because they played with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. What ends up happening? They don't score fantasy points. Why? Because they're not good enough to do it. They can end up being fine. They're like a wide receiver 4 or whatever. But just because you're on the field as a wide receiver or even as a tight end doesn't mean you're going to score fantasy points. But as a running back, especially if you have a good offensive line, you might not be Saquon Barkley, but you could still average 16, 17 fantasy points per game. And we see this happen every single year. Injuries unlocked. We saw it with Jordan Mason to begin the year last year before he got hurt. He stepped in, took the role for Christian McCaffrey. This was a guy that you were happy to be plugging in your lineups, and you were getting running back 1 production from the guy. So just something to remember. But the big thing with running backs, though, is when you do hit in, they make up the majority of the true league breaking scenarios. So if we go back to 2011 and we look at the top 3 finishers in PPR scoring, 57% of the time, this is PPR where we lean to wide receivers, 57% of the time, those have been running backs since 2011. Listen to this. If you're playing in a half PPR league, the top 3 finishers, 76% of the time have been a running back. And then in standard leagues, you guessed it, guys, it's almost 100%. It's 95% of the time. So if you're playing a league that doesn't give points for catches, you need to be drafting these running backs early. Derrick Henry should be pick 5 in a standard league. You're going to take him at the end of round 1 in a PPR league. It makes a big difference. So you can expand that analysis out to looking at, the top 12 finishers at each position. But basically, running backs kind of dominate that top 12 whenever we're talking about half PPR scoring. And then wide receivers really take over from there. So again, these are overarching ideas. This doesn't mean this is the way everything works out every single year. This is just, looking historically at the way the data is worked out, that the league breakers are often running backs.
Freedman, you've been on this planet a very, very long time. I'm sure you're still in some standard leagues or so. When you are in a situation where it is half PPR or even standard, tiebreaker probably should go to the running back.
Yes, thank you for making it sound like I am ancient. But to your point, yes, absolutely. The oldest league that I'm in, these guys still want to play standard. I mean, why don't we just play touchdown only and just get it over with? Let's be Neanderthals about this. But yeah, running backs. In these standard leagues, half PPR leagues, running back tends to be the tiebreaker. Dwain had some great points there. I don't really have anything to add. His strategy piece, everyone should go check it out. But running backs, the volume thing, I do want to add to his point. Volume is so important at the running back position. Everyone seems to know this, but I think still underappreciate it. Good wide receivers, that's basically this guy is talented on his own. A good running back, We really don't know. It basically just means he's probably in a good offense, probably plays behind a good offensive line. He's got a good play caller, and he fell into the end zone 10 times. Like, maybe he's not really all that good of a player. It's the circumstances around him. If a wide receiver puts up numbers, it almost certainly means that the guy's actually a good player. So that is definitely something to keep in mind when we are drafting running backs. Talent matters a little bit less for that position than it does for all of the other positions.
Well, I know one thing I do want to add. It's that if you guys want to win every week, you need to keep your lineup on point with the GoPuff Draft Champion and your snack stash stocked with the GoPuff app. Again, guys, beers, snacks, and groceries delivered in as fast as 15 minutes. Absolutely love their willingness to, again, give us some of those late night munchies as well. So get 60% off your first order with code FANTASYLIFE60. Enough general strategy hoopla, everyone. Let's get into the actual draft targets, starting with rounds 1 through 3, early round backs. Now, of course, we have the Bijan Robinsons, the Saquon Barkleys of the world, ranked high for a reason. I know Christian McCaffrey is also someone gracing Freedman and Dwain's top 3. I believe you guys are absolutely wild, but I respect it. That said, Dwain, the two guys you want to talk about as early round, really just focal points here, Devon Achane and, yes, Bucky Irving.
Yeah, folks know to take the round 1 guys. One thing I'll really say on that, though, is you want to look at what things are going to look like for you in round 2. And you run the 2v2 scenarios, which is, okay, I could take CeeDee Lamb in round 1. And what running back am I going to probably get in round 2? I'm going to have an option of these 3 guys, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor. Do I like that more? Or would I rather take Bijan Robinson in round 1 and have him with Ladd McConkey? And so those are the sort of scenarios you can start thinking through depending on where you're drafting. There is a big tier drop off at wide receiver around the middle of round 2. So that could be one reason in round 1 you might think about going wide receiver early. And because we have some of these values in round 2 that can fall down to you, you can still get a really good player. But Ian mentioned 2 of them. Devon Achane right now is an early round 2 pick. Ian, I think you've got him as your running back 4. I cannot argue it because he has all the things that we want. This is a guy that can catch passes. He's an explosive playmaker, so he can score from anywhere on the field. He's in the prime of his career. And we saw an uptick really in everything for him last year as far as utilization. Snaps went from 42 to 62%. Attempts went from 34 to 48%. I mean, this is a guy that was averaging 17.6 fantasy points per game on under 50% of the workload, guys. Imagine if they just decided to give him 55 or 60. Everybody's like, oh, no, we can't handle that. Well, people said that last year. People said he can't move from the 34 to the 48. I mean, this is a guy that's on a trajectory that he could get 60% of the rushing workload this year. Is it ideal for a guy his size? Maybe not. But I think we're kind of at the point where we've seen some of these smaller guys over the years, they know how to avoid the big hits. Like they can get it done. So when I look at HN, Ian, I think in a lot of years, we have a loaded year this year, guys, in round 1. It's one of the most loaded years I can remember. We've got these elite young receivers going at the end of round 1. You got all the great backs going at the beginning of round 1. There are many years where HN would be a first round pick. It just so happens this year, it's so loaded up top that he's going in round 2. The other guy is Bucky Irving. I mean, Bucky Irving, I think is a very similar profile to HN. You've got to kind of think about it. I get it. We've got Rachaad White, who's dealing with groin pull. Ian, I had to say the word coin first just so you couldn't make fun of me.
Proud of you.
But I mean, look, man, this guy had 14.2 fantasy points per game last year over the whole season. Once he took over the full-time role, 19.3. If you read all the coach speak this preseason, they love him, man. Like, there's a really good chance they load him up even more. But he had 60% of the attempts last year. Like, once he took over that role, he got all the carries inside the 5-yard line. We like the Bucs offense, even though we think it's due for regression. So he just really checks all of these boxes as well. And I would give one other one, Ian, here, and that's Chase Brown. He goes in early round 3. Bucky Irving goes at the end of round 2. Okay, Chase Brown is going early round 3. Guys, he is climbing up the boards, though. Zach Moss had the injury. He's no longer on the team. So really, we just have Samaje Perine, who probably will take a little bit of the passing down work. But it's hard to see a scenario where Chase Brown's not going to get 60, 65% of the snaps. Maybe what he got last year. It could be like 75% when this guy went completely nuclear. So if you're drafting from the early position in round 1, I actually don't mind taking one of the wide receivers and then coming back because you still get a really good running back whereas the receivers you're facing there, or guys, you could just take 2 running backs. I'm also okay with that this year. You could just take Saquon Barkley and then turn around and come back and take one of these running backs.
Freedman, we were talking about kind of preferable draft slots the other day here on the Fantasy Life show. I was saying how the 101 is really my preferred if I can get it. Honestly, 102 as well. I mean, I would love to start with Ja'Marr Chase or CeeDee Lamb. And then at the 2-3 turn, honestly, double tap Bucky Irving and Chase Brown. I do think there's quite a bit of a drop off, you could argue, after some of these top 12 Fantasy Life consensus backs are off the board. Kyron Williams in that conversation as well. On the other hand, if you're picking more towards, 111, 112 spot, man, starting off with the Nico Collins, Devon Achane before you have to go get into round 3 or round 4. I think these guys fit Freedman again, just kind of depending on where that opening draft slot is for you.
Yeah, between the two of you, you've named pretty much all of the guys that I would want to talk about. Now, obviously, if you're starting pick 1, pick 2, Ja'Marr Chase, and then Bijan, or if you really wanted to go wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb at number 2, I think you could justify it. But I will say in the back half of round 1, I feel like Christian McCaffrey is an absolute smash where he is available. Also fine with Derrick Henry. He just has such a high floor, although obviously, as we talked about earlier, better in a standard format than in PPR. And then Devon Achane at the top of round 2. Man, absolute smash. Second, everything that Dwain said. Chase Brown in the back half of round 2 or the top of round 3. Again, we had a conversation on the data, Just Talk Data and Me show. The first one talking about things that make running backs go boom. And Chase Brown, I think, has a lot of that stuff. It lines up really well for him this year to go off. And then Kyron Williams, I know he's not sexy. He was really inefficient last year, but he just got paid. He's in a great offense. And I haven't projected to score the most touchdowns out of any of the running backs this year. And you might be like, that sounds crazy. And then you look and you see, oh, this guy on a per game basis actually scores a lot of touchdowns. So he's not a fantastic receiver, but he gets the ball, especially near the goal line. So those guys are ones I'm really focusing on. And then James Cook, I know that he's in a timeshare. Josh Allen gets like a minimum of 10 rushing touchdowns every year. So Cook's touchdown ceiling, even though he had 18 touchdowns last year, it feels like his touchdown ceiling is diminished. And then he's in a timeshare with 2 other pretty decent backs, but he's in one of the best offenses in the league. 2 years ago, he had 1,500 yards, and then last year he had 18 touchdowns. What if the stars align, and then this year he hits both of those numbers? Like, it's not likely, but he has a really high floor, and he has a ceiling, I believe, that a lot of people are underappreciated. So James Cook in the back half of round 3 is someone I also like.
Bills also now have 48 million reasons to feature their recently paid running back. Good on James Cook for getting that bag. But yeah, the CMC thing as well, because there actually still is one home league site where you can theoretically get him at the beginning of round 2. That is Sleeper. Average ADP right now, 12.2. Again, want to shout out our Fantasy Life ADP tool. Very helpful depending on what site you are drafting on. I've also been publishing Yahoo, ESPN, and then Sleeper coming up soon. Specific articles to, again, help point out some of these site-specific values. More on all those guys in just a little bit. Dwain, moving on to some of the mid-round running back strategy, okay? Rounds 4 through 7 is what 4 through 6, I should say, is what we're looking at. And man, just the 2 guys that continuously are popping out for me, man. Round 4, Amarian Hampton on ESPN and Yahoo, and Kenneth Walker, round 4 on Yahoo and Sleeper. Look, we're talking running backs today, but there's so much wide receiver value in the middle rounds, man. We've already talked about, again, the options at the top of the draft. I love the idea of exiting your first 4 rounds with 2 of these studs and then attacking wide receiver from there. Am I wrong, Dwain?
No, I like it. Actually, my favorite teams, and you guys can go check out the mock draft simulator as well. So I mocked out a lot of these. Obviously, I draft a ton of teams over on Underdog as well. So we're getting live reps in. I'll be honest with you guys. The teams I like the most this year is when I get to round 6, I already have 3 running backs. Like, I really like having, okay, say you in round 2, you get Bucky Irving, okay, and then you come in round, and I've taken Omarion Hampton in round 3. You don't have to in your home leagues. And then I've turned around and I was getting TreVeyon Henderson in round 5. Now he's kind of creeping into round 4, but not so much in your home leagues. In your home leagues right now, he's still a borderline round 5 pick at the end of round 5. So Man, I just love this pocket. I want to come away with 2 of Omarion Hampton, Kenneth Walker, and TreVeyon Henderson, and get one of the guys in the first 2 rounds. And then honestly, man, I feel so good about it. I'm kind of resting on my laurels. I'm like, if these guys get hurt, it is what it is. I'm not going to keep drafting running backs. As to your point, Ian, I'm now going to go attack these other positions. But there's a lot of flexibility there, right? Because you could go with a wide receiver in round 1. CeeDee Lamb falls to you in the middle of round 1. You come back, you get Bucky Irving, okay? Then you could come back and take an elite quarterback. You could take Lamar Jackson, or sometimes Trey McBride follows. So now you've got one elite quarterback or tight end in round 3. Then you're coming back in round 4 to Omarion Hampton. And then you could even take TreVeyon in round 5. And what also makes this work is, man, where the receiver values are this year, round 6 through 9. That's the piece I've written that'll come out tomorrow, guys. And then next week I'll fold all these together into just one piece. But that's really when you start to see it. The guy, man, the wide receivers, and I'm not going to go on a tangent here, but the wide receivers going in around 6, 7, 8, and 9, there's some really good players. And so I like coming away with 3 of these running backs in the first 6 rounds. Those are my teams that I actually like the most, and then I just kind of lay off of it and play the value game, with the rest of the positions, and obviously make sure I attack receiver, Ian. So I think you're really onto something here. There's a real sweet pocket. I will say with Kenneth Walker, we do have to keep an eye on this. Okay. His workload's been getting managed at practice, but all reports are when he is out there, like he's full steam, he's doing his thing. We are talking about a guy that has had injury concerns, but I've read all the quotes and everything from the coaches. I'm sure you guys have too, and what your takeaway is there. But my takeaway is we're trying to keep him healthy for the season. But there is a chance that this plan that they say we have a plan for Kenneth. The plan for Kenneth could also bleed over into the early season of where they want to give Charbonnet some more of the work. So that's the one caveat I give with Kenneth Walker. The way I'm reading the tea leaves is it's keep him healthy through the preseason, and we want to cut him loose in the regular season. But there is a little bit of risk that they give more work to Charbonnet this season. So I just want to call that out.
I will just say, again, some guys are more injury prone than others. I'm not saying that's not a reality, but, Kenneth Walker has missed 10 games over the last 3 years. Jonathan Taylor's missed 16, so they'll fully only hold that against Walker. At the same time, we do need to keep an eye on active injuries. So, yes, currently being rested with a foot, but it sounds like it's really not that big of a deal. Always want to be on top of the news, but yeah, it does seem like with Walker, it's one of these CMC-esque situations. Like, he's just going to get hurt. Why would you draft him? He's just going to get hurt. What if he doesn't? Could be one heck of a value. Freedman, Dwain mentioned TreVeyon Henderson, someone who in this economy, no less, is available in round 7 on Yahoo right now. Give me all those drafts I can get to. Probably going to be steamed up a little bit, but your thoughts on Henderson, any other mid-round RBs, Freedman?
Yeah, Henderson, Dwain and I have talked about this. I'm just not as bullish on Henderson as Dwain is. His upside is really high, so no question about that. And I think in round 6, round 7, you can draft a guy based on his upside. You can afford to do that. I still think Rhamondre Stevenson is going to have a role, and I'll talk about him in the upcoming segment. But I will say for rounds 4, 5, and 6, I really do like a number of the running backs in this spot. Omarion Hampton, Matthew Berry's ride or die. I don't think much needs to be said about him. I still like Alvin Kamara. Old man that he is, the dude still has a role in the league and in my fantasy leagues, specifically on my team. And then round 5, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery. I think 2 guys who are still pretty underappreciated. Round 6 is the part where I do see a beginning of the wide receiver power alley, if you will. There are some running backs there that I'm okay with, Pacheco, Pollard, but I just like the wide receivers more. So to echo Dwayne's point, by round 6, I do want to have most of my running back position addressed.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say with TreVeyon,
at least 2.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say with TreVeyon, Freedman and I really are opposite. I am willing to take TreVeyon Henderson as soon as round 4. I think he's an absolute league breaker. He scored so well in the supermodel. Obviously, we're seeing it in preseason. And Ian and I, we joke about like some of these reps we see of a guy running wide open. We're like, yeah, there's like a 74-year-old coach covering the guy. Okay, guys, like he was open on a wheel route. So not talking about that, but just what we saw in the preseason game. The return for a touchdown. The vibes are so high around TreVeyon. And the guy I want to remind you of, Freedman, is the guy you named, which was Alvin Kamara. And I remember I drafted so much Alvin Kamara in his rookie year. He was 50% of my portfolio. I won so much money that year. And you know why people didn't draft him? Man, they got Mark Ingram over here and Adrian Peterson. He's not going to get any playing time. Well, he didn't get playing time, but he was so good, it didn't matter. And the way that they're using TreVeyon Henderson in the passing game, it's going to be very similar to Alvin Kamara. Like, that's what we're going to be dealing with here. I think you're going to be tough. So I don't think TreVeyon Henderson even gets to 50% of the snaps this year. I think Freedman's right. I think Rhamondre Stevenson is a quality back. I think they're going to let him handle a lot of the early down work. But I think TreVeyon's going to be right there neck and neck with him in the carries, but he's going to get all the passing down work. And he's so explosive. And the Patriots, man, we like Stephon Diggs. We like Kyle Williams, but it's a lot of unknowns, man. And don't get Ian started on Hunter Henry. It'll take 10 minutes for him to stop like ripping on this dude and his whole family. So like TreVeyon, like he could be a top 2 target in this offense. And watching what he's doing, what happens if Rhamondre Stevenson goes down? Dude, he's going to be a top 6 running back
Gibson
for sure.
season, baby.
Yeah. Look, I got to respond. I got to respond to this. Okay, so everything that Dwain said is correct. I will say, to me, the main difference between Alvin Kamara back then and TreVeyon Henderson now is that Drake May is not Drew Brees, and that the offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, is not Sean Payton. That, I think, is a massive difference. It has to do with the offensive environment, but on his own, I do agree. TreVeyon Henderson is a near elite talent who definitely profiles as an Alvin Kamara type of player. It's just the offense that he's in and the play caller that he has.
Dwain's
we have had some good screen games, just real quick, from McDaniel.
24. Yeah. Go for it.
We have had McDaniel feed running backs in the screen game. And I would just say, like, it is something worth monitoring. Like, this is what we're getting camp reports about. It's how involved they are making him in the pass game. And then we saw it in the preseason. He had 17% of the rushing attempts, but he had like 65% route participation. And he was targeted on like 35% of his routes or 50% of his routes. So I think he's going to be highly involved in the passing game.
Just one more thing. I want to close out on this.
Yeah, go for it, man.
One more thing I just want to close out on this.
Off.
I will say Dwain could be absolutely right. And Henderson is like one of the guys I'm going to be monitoring like a hawk in the first couple of weeks of the season. And I could see how I drastically change the projections, the rankings for him week over week if he just absolutely smashes early on. He's like one of the guys that we need to be very quick to move on with our assumptions early in the year.
Speaking of moving on, due to time constraints, I am not in control of, gentlemen. As I remind you, we do have to move on. Time for quarter 3 here on the Fantasy Life Show. Broke down the early round backs, the mid round back. Now time for some of the tougher ones. The late round targets, round 7 through 9. Dwain got a handful of guys here where, yes, we do want to heavily be going to the wide receivers. Still a few names that stick out to you, though.
Yeah, the 3 names for me: Isaiah Pacheco. The reports have gotten a little better. I was high on Pacheco, and then it was kind of like, oh, all these backs are working in. Now it really does it's starting to feel more like it is the Isaiah Pacheco show, and that is what we've seen really for the last 2 seasons. Now he only played 2 games healthy last year, so the healthy games last year, plus what we saw from about week 4 on the year before in 2023, we're talking about a guy 65-70% of the snaps. I don't know that he'll quite get to that. Interested in Freedman's thoughts on this, but I feel like 60% of the snaps, 65% of the rushing attempts is very much in the range of outcomes. I think the biggest risk for Pacheco is, does someone take some of the passing down work from him, right? Like he's fine in the passing game, but it's not like he's a guy you have to have on the field. That's where someone like a Brashard Smith or even Elijah Mitchell could steal a little bit of work. But I think it's all priced in where you're getting him right now in your drafts. He's going in round 7 of these drafts. I don't like the ceiling case of Pacheco as much as some of the other guys we talked about, but he could still be a guy that scores you 16 fantasy points per game, man. And if you get that in round 7, you're going to be loving it. Like, he's going to be somewhere in your starting lineup if he's scoring that much, So I really like Pacheco. The other 2 guys, Jaylen Warren, and it's an archetype thing. Ian, you and I have talked about Jaylen Warren forever. And I just put out a tweet the other day. I'm like, guys, don't give up yet. Najee Harris, as much as people wanted to dog on him, they had a round 1 pick in the guy, and he was really probably better than what people thought. right now, I know Freedman's still more bullish on Caleb Johnson, and I'm also open to Caleb Johnson being really good, but he's a round 3 pick. I think this is the best chance we've ever had of Jaylen Warren actually being the lead back in this offense. Now, major caveat, it's freaking Arthur Smith. Ian had to send me a message, whenever I just posted all my updates for the preseason utilization. He's like, "Hey, dude, Kenneth Gainwell started over Caleb Johnson." I somehow missed it because like a madman, I was trying to get through it all. We had done Zoe's birthday, so I was getting back late, and I was trying to churn through all the data, and I was like, "Holy crap, he's right. Kenneth Gainwell." Now, Jaylen Warren rested, so there's your positive. But this is an Arthur Smith kind of thing, guys. We're going to have Kenneth Gainwell get like 30% of the snaps or something. So I'm not saying this play doesn't come without risk, but Warren is the archetype of player we want. We know that he can catch passes out of the backfield. He's big enough to score the touchdowns down inside the 5, and he is an explosive playmaker on a team where it's really up in the air. So I think Jaylen Warren, you get him in round 8, guys. Not saying he's going to be a lock. And then one of Ian's favorites is Jordan Mason. I also like Jordan Mason. Number 1, you've got Aaron Jones. He's old, guys. He's old. Now, partially say that tongue in cheek because Aaron Jones last year, even though like his efficiency numbers came down, it was still better than most running backs in the NFL. It was still better than the average running back in the NFL. So you kind of got to take all these things into context. But man, Mason played really good last year. This is the offensive line upgrades for the Vikings. Kevin O'Connell. The wild cards here are the health of Aaron Jones and JJ McCarthy. Right? What do those two pieces of the pie look like? But there's a range of outcomes here where Jordan Mason is actually the lead back. Like it could happen. Or he's not the lead back, but he gets all the carries inside the 5, and then he can score a ton of touchdowns on a really good offense. So I just feel like Jordan Mason has a lot of outs. He played really good last year. They traded for him. I think he's going to have a role. And man, the contingent upside is massive. If Aaron Jones missed a 3 or 4 game stretch of game, and this is a guy known to miss stretches of games, Jordan Mason, man, he's going to be way up there in our ranks for those weeks.
Some of these specific site values for these guys. Jaylen Warren, round 10 on ESPN, even round 8 on Sleeper and Yahoo, still popping off as someone that compared to our Fantasy Life rankings, we do consider a value there. Jordan Mason, round 12 on ESPN is stealing. You might want to just go ahead and close your webcam down, shut those blinds before you do that, because I still can't get over it. Round 9 on Yahoo and Sleeper. Tony Pollard, also a target, especially with the Tajay Spears injury. Round 9 on ESPN, gotta love that. And even Caleb Johnson going mid-round 7 on Sleeper. As we know with Arthur Smith, we are expecting multiple RBs involved. Hopefully not too much Kenny Gainwell, with all due respect to the ex-Eagles Super Bowl champion. Freedman, thoughts on these mid to late round running backs, we'll say.
Dwain mentioned Pacheco. I feel like he's another version of Brian Robinson. They're two big body guys who are going to get the goal line work, the early down work in offenses that could be top 3, by the end of the season. So I like Brian Robinson. I like Pacheco. And then I will echo the guys that you guys mentioned, specifically Jaylen Warren and Jordan Mason. Both of those guys have significant upside. Jaylen Warren, because he's been so efficient, he's got that pass catching role. He could really end up being the number 1 back in an offense that is better than it was last year. And then Jordan Mason, he could also end up being the goal line back, if not the lead back in an offense that, if JJ McCarthy is even a fraction of what Nystrom imagines he is, then an offense that could be one of the best in the league. So those are the guys who stand out to me in this range.
Hey, by the way, update, guys. Isaiah Bond has a new home.
Oh, Isaiah Bond has a new home.
Guess what team signed him? Guess what team just said, you know what? Screw it. The Cleveland Browns.
The Cowboys? Oh, wow. Okay.
No, the Browns. Browns, just maybe the third time's going to be the charm here. But yeah, go ahead, Dwain.
No, I was just going to ask you guys, one other name here is Dobbins. Like we like RJ Harvey. We love the explosiveness. And then Ian, it was so hilarious when you retweeted the deal from Ben Albright, which was apparently J.K. Dobbins lost his helmet. That's why RJ Harvey got all the first team reps in the preseason week 1 game. And that does align with what we had been hearing from camp, that J.K. Dobbins really was getting most of that early down work. So I think it's going to be a split backfield. But man, Dobbins was a good player last year. And again, we're talking about another good offensive line and another scheme that we like, and a head coach. Ian, you've got the data on this. I cannot pull it from my head. You've got a younger mind. You probably pull this right off the top. But Sean Payton backfields, like it's among the top of the ones that can actually give you 2 valuable fantasy running backs in a season. Like he has done it multiple times over the history. Not so much last year because, guys, they all sucked. But J.K. Dobbins, along with R.J. Harvey, we could have 2 top 24 running backs in this offense. I think it's a plausible thing to think about.
Moving on to super late round picks. Okay, we're not talking about rounds 10 plus. These are the handcuffs, guys. I don't want a wide receiver 5 or a wide receiver 6, depending on your league. We are in some of these 14-team 3 flexes where, the Darius Slaytons of the world do have a spot in our starting lineup. But otherwise, guys, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, a flex. Don't feel like you need equal numbers of wide receivers and running backs. Load up on these lottery tickets that are, again, 1 injury away from literally rocketing up the ranks and being on the cover of every waiver wire magazine in the industry. So looking at this, guys, you can also just check out my articles on fantasylife.com, but a number of names over at ESPN. We have outside the top 150 backs: Zach Charbonnet, Trey Benson, top 150 players, I should say. Najee Harris, Tyler Algier, Isaac Orlando, Jalen Wright, Ray Davis, and yes, even Bashaw Tootin going down there at the very end. Yahoo's similar names also would actually be throwing in. Maybe still some Dylan Sampson. Obviously, Quinshon Judkins is back in Cleveland. We were expecting that, but still just a good guy for his handcuff value. Will Shipley and Keaton Mitchell at the very end of things as well. So again, long list of handcuff names, and I just can't stress enough, you don't need a second quarterback right now. You do not need a second tight end. God forbid you do not need a second kicker or DST. Maybe you don't even need one in the first place. These are the running backs. Throw Taj Brooks out there as well, that again have the best chance of just completely cutting their ADP in half after 1 injury. Lottery ticket when, suspension happens in the NFL. With that said, though, guys, we're going to play a new fun game where I'm going to describe one of these handcuff running backs. It is time for Cloaked Identity, presented by Cloaked. I'm going to give you guys 4 clues on one of these handcuff running backs, and you guys got to try to figure out who the heck I am talking about. First of all, he is being drafted outside the top 130 on Yahoo and top 160 on ESPN. Your next hint will be that he is still just 25 and born in the great state of Ohio. Any guesses so far?
No.
You guys are non-ball knowers. Has a 1,000-yard season to his name.
All right, I'm going to guess.
1,000. Go ahead.
Freedman?
I'm going to guess. It's either Rachaad White or Tyler Algier. I'm going to go with Tyler Algier.
There we go.
Yeah.
Come on down. Yes. From Youngstown. Gotta love that. My final stat was going to be 586 combined carries and targets with 0 career fumbles or drops. Mr. Consistency over there. And yes, guys, God forbid something does happen to Bijan Robinson. We would be all aboard, I should say, the Tyler Algier Express. Really is one of these guys who can step into a 3-down role. And again, going outside the top 150, that's the sort of guy I want on my bench. But yeah, guys, again, shout out to the fine folks over at Cloaked. We cloak the identity of today's player, just like Cloak can hide your identity from digital threats before they even reach you. Guys, again, it is seriously an all-in-one solution for privacy, safety, and security, protecting your identity, blocking spam, and keeping you safe from digital threats before they even reach you. Again, just limitless applications here, guys. You can create unlimited aliases, erase your info from 140 plus data brokers, block spam calls before they even ring. Also includes dark web monitoring with instant alerts, $1 million in identity theft insurance, and so much more. So again, you can get started with Cloaked's free risk scan at cloaked.com/fantasy, courtesy of Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life, to see where your personal information is exposed, and then sign up with 20% off with code FANTASY. Again, that's cloaked.com/fantasy. Fours up, squad. Fourth quarter here on the Fantasy Life Show. Time to actually go over some of the best values at the specific home sites that so many of us are going to be drafting. So I wanted to start things off with ESPN. And again, really all I did was take our Fantasy Life rankings, which you can find on fantasylife.com. Code Ian, Dwain, Freedman, whatever you want to use. Just say a random name and you'll get at least 20% off. Again, just taking our ranks versus the ADP. So over at ESPN, round 4, Omarion Hampton standing out a lot. Round 9, Tony Pollard. Also round 9, Brian Robinson, if there's, a few carries left over from future Hall of Famer Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Also round 10, Jalen Moore, and round 12, Jordan Mason. Looking over at Yahoo, we again have round 4, Kenneth Walker and Omarion Hampton. I love both those guys. Round 6, DeAndre Swift. Round 7, TreVeyon Henderson. But if you're in a league with Dwain, he'll be off the board about 3 rounds before that. Round 8, Jalen Warren. Round 9, Jordan Mason. And then finally over there at Sleeper, shout out to our friends at Sleeper. Round 1, Christian McCaffrey. Again, 12.2. You can even call him a round 2 pick technically. Round 4, Kenneth Walker again. Swift in the 6th. Caleb Johnson in the 7th. Jalen Warren in the 8th. Jordan Mason in the 9th. And J.K. Dobbins in the 10th. Dwain, again, talked a lot about Hampton and Walker already. Any of those other running backs, particularly stand out to you?
Not as much, but to your point, I think the big takeaway here is to make sure that you understand the platform that you're playing on and you know where these value pockets are. And some of the names could change a little bit. So you don't want to go into this because the way I wrote this article was using consensus because that's the best way to cover all of it, which takes the average across all of these sites. But you want to make sure that you're not expecting to be able to get a player that you can't get. At a certain spot in the draft. And so you've got to have other names that you can come up with. And so I think you gave some good ones there. I was looking at some of the different traits of some of these guys. But I think as far as looking at the values that you're getting on them, you named most of the players. One thing I would say just really quickly also to watch though, is on some of these sites, the actual value in like rounds 9, 10, and 11 is actually the receivers. Like Emeka Egbuka goes in round 10 on some of these sites. And if you've been drafting in best ball streets, you're like, what? Emeka Egbuka is like a round 6 pick now over there. Matthew Golden, is going in round 9 to 10. So depending on how you build your roster, I do agree with Ian. You want to take shots on the handcuff stuff later. But man, this year, the way these drafts are shaping up, there's a lot of young rookies right there in that range that could be really good for your roster from a wide receiver standpoint. So remember that number 1 rule. If you did spend a lot of draft picks early on the running backs, say you took, 4 in the first 8 rounds, you really should you should be considering those rookie wide receivers like Egbuka, like Golden. I wouldn't continue to take the backs at that point.
I would love to have at least 5, if not even 6 receivers through 10 rounds, Freedman. What say you?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But to Dwayne's point, depending on the league that you're in, specifically if it's on kind of more of a quote unquote home league website, there are some wide receivers that you can get after round 10 who are still pretty intriguing. So it is all about studying ADP, using our ADP tool, kind of seeing where there are pockets of value and specifically guys like or cohorts of guys that you can target in different places and then building your strategy from there.
Not saying you guys need to be going or even should be going exactly off ADP, but what's the only cooler thing than getting your guy in round 5? It's getting him in round 6. All right. That's all we're trying to do here. Set you up for success, make your roster that much stronger. Time for some bull calls though here as we close out the Fantasy Live show. Again, RB specific, as is the nature of this RB strategy show. Freedman, what is your bull call for 2025?
Okay. It's not bold enough to say Christian McCaffrey will be the RB1. People wouldn't want to hear that. Anyway, I'm going to say Kyren Williams is going to lead the position and the league in touchdowns. Now, if that's not bold enough, I'm going to go directly head to head against Dwain. And I'm going to say that Rhamondre Stevenson has more yards and more touchdowns than his boy, TreVeyon Henderson.
Wow.
Okay. I will put $100 bet on that right now with Freedman on the air. $100. TreVeyon Henderson outscores Rhamondre Stevenson in fantasy football this year.
Freedman should get like plus 250 on that.
Yeah, it's a bold take.
Yeah. Well, my bold take is that TreVeyon Henderson only plays 45% of the snaps and finishes as a top 5 running back. And so we've seen it already multiple times. Jahmyr Gibbs has done this. Alvin Kamara has done this. And if you look at the way they're wanting to use TreVeyon Henderson, you look at his breaking speed. I mean, this is him in half the role. If somehow they just decide, we like Rhamondre, but TreVeyon is actually better and we want to play him 60%, then it's going to be lights out. TreVeyon is just one of these guys I'm hanging my hat on this year. I think he's an absolute league winner. I want to get him pretty much at all costs. I'm not going to take him in round 2 or something, but from round 4 on, depending on where you're drafting. And Ian made a great point. Guys, you want to look at the ADP and you also know your leagues. Some of you are listening and you're like, yeah, man, well, my guys don't go off the ADP. Well, if you know they're not going off ADP or the Q, well, then you kind of got a decision to make on where you're going to take a guy like TreVeyon. But yes, Freedman, the bet stands if you're willing to take it. And you've got him projected for so much more. I feel like I should get, the additional odds on TreVeyon Henderson because he's a scrub to you.
Wow. Let's talk odds off the air.
My bull called Vikings
up,
RB Jordan Mason, not one,
bet.
not two, not three, 15 touchdowns for Mr. Jordan Mason this year. I think there's a lot of similarities between him and David Montgomery, except we actually have the possibility, as Dwain mentioned, of Mason actually seizing this backfield, or at least a larger chunk of it, from Aaron Jones, unlike what Demon's got going on in Detroit with Jahmyr Gibbs. Anyway, so Jordan Mason, again, someone we're in a lot of these leagues, being priced next to the pure handcuffs of the world. I really do think he could mess around, even with a healthy Aaron Jones, finish as a low-end RB2, sky high upside, even if that doesn't come to fruition as well, and Jones is out of the picture. So again, guys, appreciate you tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. We'll be back with more wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end strategy throughout the next few weeks. But until then, just have a great rest of your day. So for Dwain, for Freedman, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.